Welcome to the reality show. Today we have a couple of topics for you. First, we have the Abigail Disney story. Basically, this heir of one of the heirs of the Disney wealth has trouble sleeping at night because of the fact that she stands to inherit so much wealth, and she has this much wealth. So to kind of to do something so she can feel good, she is one of the people who proposes a global income tax. We can talk about that a little bit later. The second story is from Scotland. There's this new trial for the police to kind of stop with pursuing low-level crime, to use resources better and focus on bigger things. And then the last story is about Graham Linehan. I'm not sure how to exactly pronounce it. Some of the people from Britain might know him. He's the person who created a show like Father Ted, which at least I watched, and it's a pretty good comedy show. And as with a lot of bit more prominent people, he has criticized transgender movement and has faced criticism because of it. And with me today is Linda Corder, Michael Liebowitz, and Amy Nasser. Hey, everyone.
Good morning. Hello.
Hello.
So let's start with the Abigail Disney story. What does everyone think? Let's start with Michael. What do you think? Why is she having trouble sleeping? What do you think?
I don't know. Maybe she needs some Xanax. I can't really speak to her trouble sleeping. But I mean, her position, there's just so much wrong with it, starting with the idea that wealthy should be taxed, then the idea that it should be this global thing where they tax people on a global or international level. But the thing that always gets to me about these kinds of stories is if you're so unhappy with your $100 million, give it away. That solve your problem. Get some rest. Nobody's forcing her to be rich. We're still free to give our money away. So rather than advocating a tax, just hand it over. And I don't know why they don't all just do that when they come out with these kind of ridiculous ideas.
What do you think, Amy?
So as a counterexample to what this heiress is saying, Oprah and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson have come out with their own fund to help the people of Maui with regard to the fires there and everything. And so they have pledged their support, and they're getting people in contact directly with a really good charitable resource that doesn't have a middleman and all of this stuff. They actually can get help. And they stepped up, and that was a really wonderful idea. However, with regard to this lady's proposal, she really, and it's funny because she's the heiress to Disney. And the first thing I thought of was the expression Disney metaphysics, which is basically the primacy of consciousness idea, that we're going to somehow, make money grow on trees, and we're going to distribute wealth from the rich to the poor, and somehow that's actually going to make it better. But the funny thing is that that's not how money works. Money needs to be earned. Money needs to be earned by a human mind, and you can't go around that process. And you can't go around, if you just throw money at poor people, it's not going to actually help them in any way, because they're not going to learn the skills and understand what they want out of life, and the kinds of skills that they want to learn, and the purpose they want in their life to earn the money that they need. So that whole idea of we're just going to magically throw money at poor people is a primacy of consciousness idea. It's basically it's an idea that tries to reverse cause and effect. It's an idea that's always going to fail, and it's always going to keep the poor poor. It's always going to keep them from actually learning the skills, the kind of lifestyle that they need to embrace, and they need to build their lives so that they can support themselves in whatever way that they can. let alone the psychological effects of being on the dole or on welfare, the kind of psychological effects people go through that really disempower them and keep them down. So the kind of, this kind of scheme that this woman is, Abigail Disney, is entirely wrong, and it's going to cause a heck of a lot more harm. And as to her motivations, I'm not entirely sure, but I have my guesses.
So I want to talk a little about the motivation and the psychology, but before that, Linda, what do you think about this story?
Oh my goodness, this falls under the hypocrisy definition for me. So Miss Disney, who I've done a little bit of research on, she continues to use the name, although she continues to battle with Disney over how they spend their money, how they earn their money, who gets the money. Mm-hmm. And here she is with a net worth of approximately $120 million. I'm with Michael. If she really feels that badly that she needs to get rid of that money so she can sleep, I got $1 million of the artwork behind me and she'll still have $119 million left. But so her ongoing battle with Disney, if you just even read the Wikipedia, and you kind of have to read between the lines sometimes on Wikipedia, she's look at me. And, she's out there, she's making films, she's making money, and you want to give your money away, but you can't just assume, and I don't think that the whole global taxation thing would work anyway. I mean, it's a stupid idea to begin with, but I think it would be impossible to make work. But I also believe that this is, again, part of that look at me. There's a lot of other people within the Disney family that get a lot more attention than she does. And the ways that she reaches out to get attention are just not very intelligent.
So I definitely want to discuss the particulars about the global income tax. But I just wanted to say one thing about the whole psychology of the big story of she cannot, she's having trouble to sleep at night with so much money. And I'm wondering to what extent it is what maybe she thinks it's, I'm wealthy, therefore I need to do something. I need to be altruistic. I need to do something for other people. And to what extent it's the undeserved part. Does she know that she actually doesn't deserve the money? Does she know that only the people who actually produce or can inherit and then produce even more with that money actually deserve the money? Michael, what do you think about this?
I have no idea. I don't know what her motivation is. I think something I do find interesting when these kind of stories comes up is the degree to which the hubris or I don't know, is it hubris or hubris? I don't know, whatever it is.
Hubris. Yeah.
Hubris. Yeah. That these people have to think that they can design these sort of taxes and programs that are just going to solve poverty. They throw, sentences out there. We could fix this inequality if we just do this. And it's just such arrogance and downright stupidity that it's mind blowing, really.
There's a lot of reasons that women this age can't sleep. Okay. I am just not a whole lot younger than she is. And trust me, there are plenty of nights I don't sleep, and it has nothing to do with me wanting to give away my money. Again, I think it's the look at me thing. I think, oh, I can't sleep. I'm so sad. And, more people are going to pay attention to me because I'm telling the world that I can't sleep because I have all of this money. Well, she didn't have to accept it, but she does. So yeah, I'm not on board with her hijinks.
Amy?
Yeah, reading this, she says, we call on the member states of the G20 to work together to enact new tax regimes at national and international levels that eliminate the ability of the ultra rich to avoid paying their dues and introduce new rules that determine higher taxation of extreme wealth. Well, well, that sounds very power lusting. That I don't know exactly what her background is or what she's doing with the rest of her time. But yeah, this is more than, oh, I'm crying for the children kind of thing. I can't sleep because of all the people not having enough food to eat, things like that. No, anybody who isn't living on a rock nowadays should understand that you cannot just throw money at stuff and whatever it is, whether it's feeding people or building homes or whatever it is you want to do, whatever human activity you choose, you can't just throw money at it. You have to have a mind behind it. You have to have what the purpose of this is and how humans actually react to these kinds of situations. You have to have philosophy. You have to have a fundamental idea of what a human being is and what they're capable of and how they function. And, in objectivism, reason is the ultimate tool of survival. Yeah, so I don't know exactly what she would say is what the nature of a human being is, but it's certainly not the kind of human being that we define in objectivism. And oftentimes when I see these kinds of socialist wealth distribution schemes proposed, people come at it with the approach that human beings are essentially, they have a malevolent view of what a human being is. And they have that essentially human beings are helpless and hopeless. They can't take care of themselves. They may as well be hamsters in a hamster habitat cage thing. So, yeah.
I think this is a lot less about her wanting to help poor people than it is at her going after Disney. So again, reading the conflicts that she has within Disney. Disney is an international company with, they're everywhere. And I think she's trying to punish the corporation.
Also, we just had Jonathan Honig on the Daily Objective, and he said Abigail Disney, is one of the few people that blocked him on Twitter, or I guess X now. And yeah, something I want to say about this idea of like, okay, we want to tax the rich. There's something so like envy-driven and like, hatred of the good for being the good. I mean, I could somewhat respect someone saying, okay, we need to have like social welfare minimum because we need to like help the underprivileged. So let's do some tax that would kind of benefit it. Like I could, to some extent, I could respect this. But this whole idea, okay, let's just tax. We can figure out later what we do with the money. Let's just start taxing. I mean, what's your motivation when you just want to tax without even knowing like, okay, but what do you actually want to do with it? Or is it purely, oh, we just need to bring the rich a bit down?
Most of the people who are looking to make this sort of altruism a reality are not people that have this kind of money. There are generally people who are upset that they don't have any money. So let's figure out how to tax everybody so that, they'll end up with some of it. I don't know. It just smells bad.
Daniel, why do you, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Daniel, why would you respect that? Or you said you could respect it if they had a plan. Why?
To some extent, because I could see, I guess at least the motivation, like at least the motivation seems okay. Like, okay, I want to help the poor and let's figure out a way to do it. They go at it at the wrong way, but I could see like some, good motivation, I guess.
See, I don't see it that way. I see it as I want to use the force of the state to take some people's money and give it to other people. And it doesn't really matter to me if they're smart enough to come up with a plan or dumb enough to come up with a plan, depending on how you view it. To me, it's the same. It's people that think that force should be used to implement their desires. That's just my view.
We could maybe talk about that at some point, like what is the motivation of the people on the other side? Because at least when I listen to them, especially people who accept things like social contract, they say, okay, yeah, most people don't view even taxation as like force. That's why there's such a big difference between like us and like the rest, or even the Overton window, like the rest of the people that I can see like I can see your point, but yeah, I can somewhat understand like the good meaning of some people. Okay, guys. Yep.
Yeah, one more thing is I think, you think of Oprah and Dwayne Johnson trying to help out the people in Maui. It's still limited, and it's a value to both of them. It's a specific human value. It's something that they can point to and say, this is what I love Hawaii. I love Maui. I live there. And I have a connection, a personal value connection to the people who live there. And I'm going to go ahead and provide help to these people. That is, in that context, I think charity is extremely appropriate in that way if you have the money. What this Abigail Disney woman is doing is, it is, I think the motivation is absolutely hatred of the good for being the good, trying to cut down extreme wealth producers. And of course she cuts off she doesn't even bring it into the conversation that these people with so-called extreme wealth actually earned their wealth. She doesn't even bring it into the conversation that wealth is earned, that it's, yeah. So she is, I think she's even outside of the kind of like the pragmatic socialist of, Joe Biden and folks on the left in America, where they're saying, well, we don't want to tax too much because we want to at least give people some kind of slack to live and some kind of way to live. We can't, drive everything down into the black market or something. But yeah, the motivations and what this lady is saying is pretty evil.
About this idea of not taxing too much, you guys should definitely follow politics of like a small country. Like I live in a Slovakia, country of like 5 million people, because it's so fun when like country is in somewhat of a crisis, which we are right now, when even the left starts being like reasonable. Like now we have the most leftist party that is running in Slovakia saying like, okay, guys, we need to reduce spending. This is getting out of hand. We have to reduce even the debt, the government debt. This is like the most leftist party in Slovakia saying it. So yeah, that's definitely interesting. Okay, let's talk about just a little bit about like the specifics of this global income tax. I'm not sure if you guys read up what exactly it is, but from what I understand, it's all these countries have different corporate tax, and you have countries like, let's say, Ireland that has a low corporate tax, like 12.5%, which I still found like crazy that like 12.5% corporate tax is considered a tax haven. But basically this idea of global income tax or global corporate tax would say, okay, let's say it's 20. And then if a country is in the lower than the 20, then when a company makes profits in, let's say, United States, they can like increase the tax to that extent. So that's what I understand. What do you guys think about this? If
I just
anyone
don't
has
think there's any way to make it happen. I mean, I think it's kind of a moot point that it's not feasible.
Yeah, that was also my understanding, because even in this article, they are talking to G20 countries, which last time I checked is a bit less than how many countries are in the world. So what stops like you from moving to another tax haven? Maybe it's just since a lot of countries are already moved to places like, I don't know, Liechtenstein, Switzerland, or Ireland. Maybe they are just trying to catch up to them because it would be more costly to move out of there than just stay. But again, I don't see the point.
I'll bet
Okay.
Abigail's money isn't in a bank in New York sitting somewhere. I'll bet it's offshore somewhere.
Okay, anyone has anything to say about this topic, or can we move on? All right. So let's go to Scotland. We don't have anyone from UK, unfortunately, but there has been this proposal to train or make a kind of a trial to basically ignore low-level crimes because they don't have enough budget, they don't have enough police officers, to start ignoring low-level crimes and basically focus on the bigger things. We have already seen this in New York and LA when they ignore. How much is it now in LA? Isn't it like 1,000?
It's $1,000. So in 2014, Proposition 47 raised it from, I believe, $450 to $1,000. So basically, in my business in Napa, someone could walk in and take a small sculpture or a small painting, and they're just going to turn a blind eye. Sorry, we don't have time for it. We don't have room in our prisons. We don't, we can't do this. We can't do that. And the small business owner or business owner is the one who suffers. We've had instances where in Sephora, these kids would come in with these big baggy pants and they'd have the legs tied, and they would just clear the shelves of expensive jewelry and run. And the very first time I saw that happen, we were in Burlingame, California, and I was talking to the manager because Quentin and I were running the business association there. And I said, "Did you call the police?" "No, because they won't do anything." So they just let it happen, which of course sets the precedent for these same kids to come back or their friends to come back and do the same thing. It's not okay.
Yeah, it's really regrettable that, and I can see the reasoning. They have low budget, they need to focus. I can see they need to focus, but it's really unfortunate since there's only a couple things the government should really do. And one of those few things is to provide the police, make sure that crime doesn't happen, or at least to make sure to get the criminals and make sure they don't repeat it again.
Well, the people
Michael,
who are the people who are making these decisions, I looked to see, I think when 47 passed, it was like 59% in favor of raising that limit from $450 to close to $1,000. It was $950. The people who are even proposing these idiot ideas are not business owners. And we see that a lot in local government. The people who are saying, we need to put up these bike lanes that take away parking spaces are not business owners. And I guess only 43% of the business owners voted to keep that from happening. But yeah, it's typically people who don't have anything in the game who are making these decisions. And then, of course, in California, being very, very, very left, they went along with it.
Michael, what do you think about this?
I think that if you want to make money available for the police to go after real crime, they should get rid of laws that make no sense. Like, for instance, the war on drugs. It's in America. I'm pretty sure they have a similar thing in England or Great Britain. And if you just would get rid of stupid laws like that, victimless crimes, you would free up so many resources to go after real criminals. That said, I have to admit, I'm skeptical whenever I hear people with entrenched interests, whether it be police, correctional officers, government officials, whatever, start talking about the catastrophes that are going to ensue if they don't get their funding. It just puts up red flags for me. And I'll give you an example. Recently in Connecticut, there was a correctional officer in a prison got assaulted. At least that's how it was presented to the public. This guy was assaulted. He's in a dangerous situation. He's in a block with 50 guys that are out, and it's a horrible thing. So I know people that are in that prison, and I found out that what actually occurred was two guys were fighting. The officer violated protocol. He should have called for backup before interfering in the fight. He didn't. He stepped between the two guys and got hit basically by mistake. There's only a few guys out at a time because it was feeding time. There's not even 50 guys in the block that allegedly had 50 guys out at once. But this was presented to the public as if we need more resources. This is, it's a horrible environment. It's so dangerous. So I'm very hesitant to embrace claims like that. I don't know. I'm not from the UK. Maybe it's true that they need more resources to go after these crimes. Maybe it's going to create a situation where they're making people less safe. I always take that type of stuff with a grain of salt when people are, I guess they're financially interested in the result.
Maybe Abigail could help them out and give them $100.
Yeah, that'd probably be wonderful. Yeah.
She could get one good night's sleep. Yep. Just one. Yeah, this is, I kind of wonder how things are in Scotland. Do they have, so in the States, we have things like Neighborhood Watch, or if you remember the Guardian Angels way back when, I don't know if those are still around New York, but basically volunteer groups of people who would go out and patrol the streets at night. It'd be not necessarily a citizen's arrest, but at least they'd be eyes and ears so that they can report crimes. So I kind of wonder if they have any kind of, do it yourself, sort of pull yourself up from your bootstraps kinds of folks in Scotland, in the neighborhoods, who would actually be willing to do that. Of course, that's not, they shouldn't have to do that. There should be enough money and enough taxes to actually have a police force that actually enforce laws that are rational, that protect individual rights, that protect the poor, that protect people on the streets, that protect business owners. So if anything, oftentimes what happens in those situations, if they defund the police, they're so short-sighted. I don't understand how they're so short-sighted, because what always happens is all of a sudden you're no longer a tourist destination, and you're not going to have people come and spend their money from out of the country. You're going to lower all sorts of tax revenue because of this even further. So they're going to have to figure this out. They're going to have to fire some bureaucrats to actually free up some funds for this, because it's not sustainable. It never works. And like in Detroit, like now in Chicago, it never works. And they always have to, then they all of a sudden they have this realization that the politicians don't have enough money for themselves and their many homes. So they're going to have to actually do things right and set up a government that they can actually support and protect individual rights. Lest there be pickpockets everywhere when tourists arrive. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about this idea that Michael brought up about the entrenched interest and kind of maybe the bad side of the police officers. So you already have this really incredibly stressful job. I mean, on a daily basis, you are really, you could even say, risking your life. And just imagine you go into this profession, you want to protect the people, you want to, make the world, or maybe even your local city a better place. Then you find out, okay, you cannot actually pursue people who steal even up to $1,000. Instead, focus on this a couple guys who let's say smoke marijuana or something like that. Again, bringing example from my country, if you get caught with even 1 gram, you get 8 years in Slovakia right now. That's the minimum you get. And how much of a long time you even good police officers can stay in this type of job without getting corrupted, if the things you have to do are so corrupted.
Daniel, I would like to say, because this is a claim that's often made, that the police have such a dangerous job. They need our support. In Connecticut, where I live, they've taken away their qualified immunity. It's a bit technical, but a lot of people are up in arms. So I just did a quick Google search, the most dangerous jobs, the 25 most deadly. Here's a few. Number 1, logging workers. 2, roofers. 3, first-line supervisors of farming, fishing, and forestry. Agricultural equipment operators. Heavy tractor trailer truck drivers. Underground mining machine operators. Farm equipment mechanics and technicians. Police aren't even in the top 10. That doesn't mean it's not a dangerous job. What it means to me is that it's an overblown claim that's made about how dangerous it is. And I've actually interviewed a police officer that I've known my whole life. And I've known a lot of cops, and I've known some good cops and I've known some not so good cops. The problem is, what happens is there's pressure for the cops that are good to stick up for the cops that aren't so good. Because if you're a police officer and you go and you say, look, this guy is not doing what he's supposed to, you're now a pariah. So I just want to just bring some of the context in from my own experience. That doesn't justify them not enforcing the law. I'm not saying, I'm just trying to bring some of my skepticism in the reason for it, because I've seen a lot in my life where there's a lot of corruption. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
So, okay, let's talk about maybe a little bit about like, what's the solution to this? Can anyone give me a 10-minute way how to solve this whole problem? The idea, how to get good cops in, how to get rid of bad cops, how to maybe, like Michael mentioned, get rid of this like entrenched interest, because you know, with, let's say, private unions, if they don't have a special government privileges, you know, it's free market. You can deal with them how they want. If workers, they can form a union, as long as they don't get any special government privileges, it's okay. It's free market. But with police officers, it's really difficult since it is public. It's only public. It cannot be privatized. How do you deal with all these things? If anyone has anything to say on that.
I think they should be reimbursed based on results. And specifically, I've thought a lot more about this as relates to prisons than I have as relates to the police. But in prisons, you get paid no matter what. And in some instances, you get paid based on the amount of people that are housed in the correctional facilities. Now, there's a corporation it operates out of the UK. They've got prisons in Australia and in New Zealand called ARCUK. And they have started a policy where they reimburse their staff based on reductions in recidivism. And from what I understand, they've had some good results. And I don't see why you couldn't do a similar thing with police officers. It would be a difficult thing to measure results. Obviously, a lessening of crime would be one. Maybe you could have community relations reports or something. I mean, I'm just, off the top of my head, but ultimately incentives in life matter. And when the incentive is to stick by bad cops by means of, for instance, the blue wall, or the same thing operates in prisons, you're going to end up with bad results. When people's mortgage depends on whether they do a good job or not, things change for the better.
Amy, what do you think about this idea?
Yeah, so I have a few things. I mean, in terms of incentivizing the police to do a better job, yeah, I mean, obviously, well, first, I'm not entirely sure how you can incentivize that unless you actually change the laws and take out arbitrary laws for them to enforce and emphasize laws that are based on individual rights for them to enforce. Now, as far as I understand, I don't know, this is just an anecdotal and non-data driven saying here, but I think most cops are always, they're there to help pretty much. But yeah, they are constrained by having to do a lot of other things that that shouldn't be in their purview, that they shouldn't have anything to do with. So I think, I kind of wonder if there is like an organization out there for police officers to join an association or something like that, where they would promote the idea of enforcing laws that promote individual rights, as opposed to war on drugs, things like that, prostitution, all that. So yeah, I guess that would be my first step, is to see if there are those sorts of organizations out there that police officers might be able to join, and they might actually get speakers involved, with their districts. And so, yeah, I guess that's the first step that I can think of. Other than that, my only thought about all of this is, I don't know if in Scotland they have true crime podcasts. I'm a I do listen to true crime podcasts quite a bit, and mainly for the information that I gather with regard to how people handle situations where the police and detectives and the courts will not look into and get justice for families, or find out, solve murder cases, or find missing people, and people, the kinds of behaviors that I see from families who are extremely persistent, who really do get results, and they call the station every day, they call the court every day, and then they finally do get results, and they do get more attention from the media eventually, and they do get their cases solved. But yeah, so all I can say in Scotland is good luck, and they need to have private organizations that they can join and help themselves for now.
Linda, do you have anything to add?
Well, firstly, taking politics out of law enforcement. There's way too much going on in the way of politics. One example was in Napa when we were having issues with the Black Lives Matter movement, and there were protests and businesses were having to shut down. The police supported the protesters. I mean, they don't have any business being in the politics. If we can get the politics out of law enforcement and then find a way to prioritize what their jobs really should be, and that's not arresting someone because they've got marijuana in their car, and maybe instead going after somebody who's doing a smash and grab.
Okay, anything else to say about this topic? Yeah, so oh, Michael, were you going to say something?
No.
Yeah, so basically incentives matter. What do you incentivize the police officer to do? They will do that. If you make them focus on fighting against drugs, they will focus on that. If you make sure they focus on protecting individual rights, they will do that.
Are the police unionized in Scotland?
I can quickly Google maybe.
Because that's a big problem. Wherever unions go and they're backed by government, it's a big problem.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. So do you think there should be no public unions? So for people like police officers?
Yes, because what happens is this, and this gets to the heart of what I was talking about before, where they don't report on their coworkers, because you can't fire them. So it gets to the point, what is the point? This guy can be doing all kinds of bad stuff. I report him. He doesn't get fired. Nothing comes of it except for everybody hates me. So, why bother? What would be the point? The same thing happens in corrections all the time. You can't fire. I mean, I've seen correctional officers sleeping on the job, and what are you going to do? So, yeah, the unions are very, very bad. They really create perverse incentives.
Yeah, it looks like there's a Scottish Police Federation, which 98% of all police officers are in that. They don't call it union, but it looks like a union in all but name. Okay, just quickly, a super chat from Ashley Schrack. Thank you so much. She says the needs of the needy would increase. I think she's still talking about the other topic we had. And also we have a super chat from Apollo Zeus. Thank you so much. He says panel and gives us a big heart. So thank you. And let's discuss the last topic. So Graham Linehan, does anyone know how to pronounce his name?
No. I would guess Linehan.
Linehan. Okay, Graham Linehan. Has anyone watched any of his shows?
No.
Have you heard about the show like Father Ted? You guys should really watch British comedies. They're much
awful. They are awful. I love Masterpiece Theater, and because I love Masterpiece Theater, I tried giving the British comedies a go, and no, not for me.
Tell us how you really feel.
There's a few out there, like Are You Being Served? That was really, really funny. Faulty Towers, but no, I have no idea about this comedian.
I only know the young ones from the 80s. And I love Rick Mail.
So what happened is apparently he was an outspoken critic of transgenderism. He was criticized because of it, and he even lost one of his shows because of it. And there was even one of his notable critics, author John Boyne, later regretted that he publicly shamed him because he didn't believe he should lose his show because of it. And maybe since we don't know that much about him, we can discuss it in a broader issue. Maybe discuss even someone like who wrote Harry Potter? Can someone remind me?
J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling.
Well, I would like to talk about this guy because I did actually see basically what he wrote. And this is, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat here, but he basically has, and there needs to be a name for this because a lot of people I've seen, including J.K. Rowling, including a lot of people, they don't like the idea of that kind of in your face, you better call me by my proper pronoun, they don't, obviously. Most decent people would recoil from that and say, so you want me to do this? Why? Exactly what, I don't even know you. And how do I know when I'm seeing a trans person or not? And how do I know if I'm going to get it right? How do I know, how do I navigate these kinds of human relationships and friendships and family relationships with transgender people, if everyone is in agreement with being in your face about it, in other words, if everyone is in agreement that rudeness is something that should be a social norm, because that's what that is. And from what I can interpret what this Linehan is saying is he doesn't like the word cis. I don't like the word cis. Call me straight, call me Amy, whatever it is. But and he doesn't like the idea of people being in your face about their pronouns. He has come out and said that he supports transgender people. I don't know the entire background of this other person who is saying, maybe I should have supported him because I didn't want to see him canceled and lose his job and lose his I think he lost his wife or girlfriend or something. Anyway, yeah, I don't want to see people losing everything that they have because they don't like that kind of in your face rudeness that trans activists will say should be socially acceptable.
Yeah, I'm always surprised with the such a militant going against anyone who disagrees with certain parts of transgender either movement or maybe the people. I even tried to research J.K. Rowling at some point because I'm saying, okay, everyone is so much against her. When the game came out, Hogwarts Legacy, which doesn't really have anything to do with her. I mean, she's getting money from it because it's her IP, but she didn't have anything to do with that game specifically. Even in the game, you can technically be transgender because it allows you to choose your type of voice, your type of figure, and then which quarters you stay in. Are you a witch or are you a wizard? So I'm like, okay, let me actually research this, and I'm having so much trouble to find anything really bad besides maybe she still believes in their rights, but maybe she still feels if
I can tell you about if you don't mind me giving a little bit of background. If you haven't listened to the Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling podcast, you should go ahead and take a listen to that. That's helpful. There are, this whole situation could just be diffused by saying we should all just genuinely be polite to each other, no matter what we call ourselves or whatever it is, and kind of reestablish that social norm of politeness. But so J.K. Rowling and a lot of folks like her were aghast. They had kind of a reactionary sort of reaction to this, and assumed the worst of a lot of trans activists for good reason, but assumed the worst of them, and didn't approach it in a soft way, as it were. But with J.K. Rowling, as far as I understand, she got into this because she's a feminist. She didn't want to see women in Scottish prisons have to share their quarters, or women in like halfway houses in Scotland to share their quarters with men who, well, with trans women who are biologically men. There are a lot of reasons for this. There are a lot of news stories to follow with this and everything like that. And of course, she doesn't want people to be locked up for a hate crime if a trans person is somehow offended by somebody's not using their proper pronouns or whatever it may be. Yeah, so it's one of those situations. I think it came out of the pandemic. I think that really lit the fuse along with BLM. A lot of people reacted emotionally, and they shouldn't have. And yeah, so at this point, at this stage in the game, I think people are starting to become a little bit more reasonable with these whole standards, and realizing that now that we're actually interacting with each other in person past the pandemic, we can have relationships with trans people that doesn't involve arguing. It's just, if you want to be friends with somebody, you want to be respectful of them. And if you like that person, you want to show them respect. And yeah, you will use their pronouns, even if it might be awkward. And on top of that, the trans people will then respect when people who are not used to those pronouns mess up, because they'll say, well, I still want to be friends with this person, even though, they accidentally called me a she or whatever it was. So I think that's going to get a lot better. But in the meantime, yeah, Graham Linehan shouldn't have been canceled. And I'm glad somebody is sticking up for him at this point.
So you mentioned hate speech, and we have to remember UK does have hate speech laws that have been people arrested for just saying something. It's very different than in America. You still have First Amendment, which helps you a lot in these areas. Even in Slovakia, we have a certain type of hate speech laws. Mostly with our history, it's about either Nazism or communism. So we have like those type of hate speech laws. But Linda, what do you think about either the Linehan situation or even J.K. Rowling?
So I didn't read the totality of that. Did he use his show for or against? Did he use his stage, his luxury of being up on a stage and having a microphone to either be for or against trans? So this is where I'm kind of coming in a little bit late to this particular subject. I mean, if you're taking your fame or your ability to get up on a soapbox and do this, then yeah, you might want to be careful about what you say. If it's by accident, I mean, I can think back to when, if you accidentally called a older single woman, if you addressed her as Mrs. So-and-so, and she would just be aghast. No, it's Miss. Or then there was Ms. that came out, right? And so, I'm Ms. because I didn't want to be identified as maybe being an old maid. I mean, so we've been dealing with identity. Well, what are they? Is that a pronoun, I guess? But trying to figure out, you can't be completely responsible for not knowing. I mean, I struggled the other day with they, because I was having a really hard time remembering to say they, and because I was focusing on it so bad, it was terribly awkward. So I don't know what he did, but if he used that position and that's why it happened, then that's kind of on him. If you're gonna stand up there in front of the world, you want to have a private conversation or a conversation with somebody in a coffee house, that's totally different.
What do you think about this, Michael? About this idea of like using your position?
Well, I'm kind of and have been from the beginning torn about the cancel culture idea, because a part of me says, well, look, these are voluntary transactions. This guy, Linehan, does not have a right to an audience, and he doesn't have a right to not have people say bad things about him. So if he does something that people don't approve of, so they don't want to watch his shows, well, so be it. You know, no force is involved. It's okay. But at the same time, when the culture's rotten, it can get to the point where we're suppressing things that ought not to be suppressed. So I'm a little weary of it along those lines. But I just want to say, in response to what Linda said, is the expectation that we're supposed to learn all these new terms so quickly, it's just not reasonable. Cis, the first time I came across cis was like 2 years ago, and it was in an article about Black Lives Matter, and they were like, if you're cis this or trans, and I'm like, what in God's name are they talking about? I have no idea. And if I make a mistake because I just don't know, and somebody gets in my face with that rudeness, like Amy said, come on, dial it back a notch. But then there's this vitriolic hatred towards trans people that this makes me sick. I was reading through a thread on Facebook the other day where they were just saying awful things about trans people. And they were invoking God an awful lot. So I put the question in, I said, how many of the people on this thread observe the Sabbath? I'm just curious, because they pick and choose for convenience which parts of the Old Testament they like. I'm guessing they don't want to be stoned to death for working on a Saturday. And, one of the people said to me, your comments are irrelevant. And then I responded, I wonder if that's what they said to the guy who said he who is without sin should cast the first stone. I didn't get a response, but my point is that we have this irrationality in religion that either is the cause or lends support to this hatred for trans people. And that to me is just as bad as the in your face trans people who, you better call me by my pronoun. I guess it all comes down to a lack of reason. You just have people that are just responding emotionally, and nothing is getting sorted out. And thus we have what we have.
Well, there's such a thing as, again, where Amy was talking about being courteous and being, being aware of what's going on around you and not being rude about it and not being hateful about it. I mean, being able to have a discussion without slinging mud at each other. I know several people that are trans or are, in transition, trying to figure out who they want to be. That is their business. And unless it affects me negatively, it's not my business to say anything about it. They are people. I like them for who they are, or I love them for who they are. But again, I have a real problem with people taking to these public platforms and then kind of doubling back and say, oh, woe is me. This happened because I said something. Well, maybe you shouldn't have said it there.
Yeah, we have definitely lost a lot of, or at least a certain part of population lost a certain amount of either tolerance or maybe kind of understanding that some people mean well and they don't always are correct. Like I heard this story about, there was this Democrat, either senator or I'm not sure what it was exactly, but she was talking about LGBT people and she mentioned sexual preference. And she got a huge backlash because sexual preference is an outdated term. It implies that you have a choice if you're gay or lesbian or something, and she should completely lose her position because of it. And she was like, and she was someone who like fought for like LGBT rights. So you have even these people who are like actually fighting for these things, and even they are falling behind because of how fast things are moving and how they cannot even catch up. She was very much, we always use sexual preference. I had no idea it had changed. She's okay with like adapting the language, but getting completely canceled over this one thing, it's just it's getting crazy.
People have been much more emotionally driven, and that's scary, because that complete drive of your emotions. I'm going to let you go while I make this phone call go away.
Okay.
One thing
Yeah.
I want to say, there's also been this really bad backlash from like the other side, because when one side is completely emotional, the other side follows very fast. And conservatives are very good at adopting what the left has been doing for the last couple of years. They're very good at that. And there's definitely been this, on one side you have trying to push gender or LGBT things everywhere, and the other side is as soon as you show LGBT things anywhere, it's woke culture going mad. It's getting completely crazy. Like again, I saw there's again this new game that came out, and at some point you had like a transgender black character there, and she didn't even mention it. You can only like kind of make it out of the thing she says, or they say. I'm not sure now. But he went on this complete rant for like 5 minutes about how you cannot even play games anymore without getting this woke ideology in, and it's gotten like, I think it has maybe like 15 million views on Twitter. So what do you guys think about this? Like, you have one side who's a bit crazy, and then the other side, the only response they can give is getting equally crazy.
It's really easy to assume negative intent when you're online. When you don't see the person in front of you, when you're in other words, it's not psychologically real to you that you're dealing with another human individual. But when you're in the same room with them, it changes completely. And I think if we can get away from conversing about these topics online and actually get together with people and get to know people as individuals, have shared interests, shared values, and say, let's be human beings first, regardless of what anybody wants to be called. Let's be reasonable, let's be rational, let's be compassionate for each other. Let's look for each other's values, assume positive intent, and bring out the best in each other as individuals. Oftentimes, that's exactly what I say to people online when these situations flare up. And I do get a good response from most people with those words.
I think that's a really good point to perhaps end on. Has anyone else anything else to say? Michael?
No, I'm good.
How
I
about
think
you,
it's all
Linda?
been said.
Good.
Let me just read a couple super chats. So we have a super chat from Robert Naser. Thank you so much. He says, finally, a panel with proper gender diversity. Amy and Linda, fire. Then we have a super chat from James in all caps. British comedy is great. Father Ted is awesome. So Michael, you're wrong.
Clearly he's wrong again.
Thank you also Apollo Zeus. He says, Razi, you owe me. And a super chat from Walter. Thank you so much. Okay, this has been a great panel, everyone, and I'm hoping we can do this again at some point. We'll be back tomorrow with the daily objective. That's 5:30 p.m. UK time, and then we have the reality show at 6 p.m. UK time, and we should also have Life on Earth at 10 p.m. UK time. Amy, are you gonna join
Yes,
Robert again?
I will be there. I will be
So
there.
it's gonna be Robert Naser and Amy Naser. Okay, thank you everyone, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Mind your own business and be kind.